إلا بالله العلي العظيم إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون صلى على محمد وآل محمد. I begin by saying, brothers and sisters, welcome to the first majlis of this year's Ashura program, where we remember Abu Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salam, his sacrifice in what he gave us and what we are reaping 1,400 years later. The sacrifice that Abu Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salam wrote with his blood. The sacrifice that changed the course of history for 1,000 years and for years to come. The sacrifice that toppled the most rooted and oppressive of tyrants. The revolution that destroyed an empire in what it was and destroyed those who sat on the throne of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam every single time they tried to speak in his name. A revolution that even until today, my brothers and sisters, young and old, men and women, people who are politically affiliated and not, people who know about this religion and not, people who believe in God and those who don't, can connect to. And it resonates with them. He was Abu Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salam. A revolution that was manifested by a man who walked on 2 feet, a man who was just like us, a human being, but an immaculate human being, a different human being. A human being with morals, values, ideas, eloquence, infallibility. A man who did not sin, nor did he make a mistake, nor did he forget. A man who understood why he stood and understood why he sat if he sat. And first and foremost, a man that understood what it meant to be just, not only with your friend, but also with your foe. The man who shapes our identity, makes us who we are, makes you, who you are, and shapes you, whether you want to be shaped by him or not. Tonight, my brothers and sisters, we could have spoken about every other topic there is, social topics, historical topics, something that would entertain you for the next 45 minutes to an hour. But we're going to talk about something a little different. We're going to talk about you. Yeah. We are going to speak about you and me. We're going to speak about our identity. We said the word identity, and we said that Abu Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salam shapes the identity that we have. We asked the question, how? How does he shape our identity? And if he shapes our identity, how much of that identity did he shape? That's a question that you should ask yourself, and I should ask myself here. I'm no different than you. How much of your identity did this man that lived 1,400 years ago shape? Ask that question. Really, really ponder on that question. Inshallah, these 10 nights, we're not just going to be here to tell stories in ahadith. No, we're going to try and think. We're going to try and think about ourselves, introspect. How much of our identity did Abu Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salam shape? And how do we know this? How do we know how much of that identity was shaped by him, alayhi salamullah? Tonight, my brothers and sisters, we're going to delve into that. We're going to ask ourselves, how much of him do we know? How much of this revolution do we know? Do we know where it began? And do we know where it ended? These are questions we want to answer tonight. Usually we sort of put those questions in points. But this year we're going to try and do it a little different. We're going to give first like an introduction to what we're going to be speaking about, and then move on, inshallah, from there. To tackle this, my brothers and sisters, to understand the revolution for what it was, we need to understand where it began. A lot of us think that it began on the 1st of Muharram, yani tonight. Fact is, my brothers and sisters, it started years before that. Years before that. And it didn't even start with Abu Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salam. It started with his father, Ali Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. We know this from two reasons, historical. But also we know this from the words of the enemies themselves. The words of the enemies themselves. It said, when Abu Abdullah al-Hussain was killed, and his women were taken as captives, the women were in chains and they were walking towards Kufa. While they were walking towards Kufa, the riwayah says this: the enemies the entire time would curse Ali bin Abi Talib alayhi salam. Although Ali bin Abi Talib did not hold the sword against them. Nor did Ali bin Abi Talib even take part in the battle. But they were cursing Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Because the battle began there. The battle began there. And the revolution began there. And ultimately, it will end there. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So the answer is how? Historically speaking, what happened? How did it begin with Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam and get all the way to a place in the middle of a desert called Nainawa, Karbala? Listen. It is said Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam's caliphate was taken from him. And for 20 or so years, if not 25 years, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam took part in the caliphate in the backgrounds. In other words, he saved Islam or worked on Islam, reviving Islam in the background, while those who were in the forefront were doing what they were doing. Nonetheless, after the death of the third Khalifa by the name of Uthman ibn Affan, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam becomes the Khalifa finally. By who? By the choice of the people. Yani the people came together and picked Ali bin Abi Talib to be the next Khalifa. طيب. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam becomes the next Khalifa. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam is the Caliph of the Muslims for the next 5 years. In those 5 years, he fights 3 civil wars. 3 civil wars. Yani the Muslims themselves got up, they stood against each other and they fought each other. The first war was with a man by the name of, or against him, a man by the name of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. This was the Battle of Siffin. The second battle was with Aisha, the wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the Battle of Al-Jamal. And the third battle, my brothers and sisters, were with the Khawarij. The first battle was Al-Jamal, second battle was Siffin, the third one was with Al-Khawarij. Who were Al-Khawarij? Al-Khawarij were a group of people that separated themselves from the army of Amir al-Mu'mineen and ended up standing up against him and fought him. And that was the battle of Al-Nahrawan. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam fights these 3 battles in his 5 years or 4 years and a little bit of his caliphate. And finally he is killed by the sword of Abdul Rahman ibn Muljim, who was one of the Khawarij. He was one of the Khawarij. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam falls. He's martyred. And this is where the events start to take place one after the other. A chain reaction that ultimately now will lead us to Karbala. Watch what happened. It is said after the death of Imam Ali alayhi salam, Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam stands in Kufa. He looks at the people. And he says to them, "Man arafani faqad arafani, wa man lam ya'rifni fa ana al-Hasan ibn Ali." He stands in front of them and he says, "Whoever knows me, knows me. Whoever does not know me, I am al-Hasan ibn Ali." And he begins to recite and tell the people of his merit, his virtue, who he was. The people, they stand up and they pledge allegiance to Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam. It is said the entire city pledged allegiance to Imam al-Hasan except a select few. And many of the Arabs around, and even some of the Arabs, if not most of the people in Iraq, even pledged allegiance to Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam. This, according to historians, was extremely special. Why? Because the Muslims just went through 3 civil wars. And as you know, when a nation goes through civil wars, the people are at unrest. The people are not together on one thing, on one idea. People have different ideas. People have different ways of thinking, and they want the Muslim nation to go a different way, and that's why there was a civil war. But when Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam stood, the people stood with him. طيب. Who hears of what's going on? That same man by the name of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, and he's the father of Yazid. He hears of what happens, that Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam has become the Khalifa, and the Muslims, generally speaking, the majority of them, pledged allegiance to Imam al-Hassan, or at least accepted him as the new authority. What does Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan do? He was very sly. He sends a spy to infiltrate the people at the time, to infiltrate the people of Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam, to go in, to get as close as he can to Imam al-Hassan and even try to kill Imam al-Hassan. Some historians say that he even sent the spy, not just to get information, but also to try and kill Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam. You're asking me, just in brackets, you're asking me why we're talking about Imam al-Hassan. Isn't this about Imam al-Hussain? You're going to see how both of them connect. You'll see. Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam's people find out about the spy. It is said he's killed. Imam al-Hassan writes to Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan and he tells him, we found your spy and he's dead. They exchange letters. Muawiyah comes forward and says to Imam al-Hassan, he says to him, you know who I am. You know that I have more experience than you and I'm older than you and I have more right to become the Khalifa than you because of what I have, who I am, and the status that I hold. Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam responds to him. In the end, Muawiyah says, we would hate for you to die at the hands of the lowest of the people. He's threatening Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam. Imam al-Hassan also responds to him. And so, Muawiyah writes his final words. There is nothing between me and you except the sword. And so, Muawiyah declares war on Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam. So what does Imam al-Hassan do? Listen. Imam al-Hassan, knowing now that he has to stand up against Muawiyah, he sends his companions, his men, to the different tribes of the Arabian Peninsula at the time. And he tells them to get ready for war. Please, Shabab, listen. He tells them to get ready for war. The riwayat say that those tribes and the tribal leaders, they accepted to go to war with Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam and support him. But they say that they accepted primarily for 3 reasons. Listen to what the 3 reasons are. Number 1, the people accepted just because their leaders accepted. Yani there was no ideology, there's no belief, there was nothing holding them on to the message of Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam or to Imam al-Hassan himself other than the fact that they were blindly following their leaders. Number 1. Number 2, some of them were eager to loot and to get money from the fallen men on the battlefields. So they wanted to kill the other person, the people on the other side, just to get their swords, their shields, to get money, pretty much. Third, some of them were Khawarij. And the Khawarij hated both Ali Amir al-Mu'mineen and Muawiyah. So they wanted anything to get back at Muawiyah. So they joined Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam. This is what historians say. So just looking at it superficially from the outside, was the army of Imam al-Hassan weak or was it strong in its idea and its ideologies? Very weak, very weak. And who exploited that? None other than Muawiyah. It is said he began to buy out the people. You'd send them money for them to leave or betray Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam or to become spies within the army. Allahu al-alim. He began to buy them out, even the leaders themselves. Some riwayat say even the cousin. Listen, even the cousin of Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam was bought out. Was bought by Muawiyah. Some riwayat say even the cousin of Imam al-Hassan himself was bought out by Muawiyah. What happened? The riwayat say the army of Muawiyah start to move towards Imam al-Hassan. Imam al-Hassan mobilizes his troops and they move towards the battlefield. They move towards Muawiyah's men. When the night falls, they stay at a place near a bridge. What's that bridge called? The bridge is called Jisr al-Munbish. They sit there and they put camp there. They stay there during the night. Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam wants to test his army. So look what he does. It is said he stands up on the pulpit. And this is all leading to Karbala. So listen, please. Please. He stands up on the pulpit and he says to them, you know that I don't want to take you astray. You know that I never wanted evil for any Muslim ever. Imam al-Hassan didn't finish what he's saying, but the people They understood, or they thought, that Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam wanted to make peace with Muawiyah. He didn't want to fight him anymore. So what did they do? It is said they revolted against Imam al-Hassan. They started to call him a kafir, and they even attacked Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam. They looted his tent. They looted, I believe some of the riwayat say, the shawl that he had, or the robe that he had on his shoulders. It is said the Shia, the lovers of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, those who knew who Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam truly was, they helped him escape and they surrounded him. He got up onto his horse and they surrounded him. They tried to escort him out of the crowd of people. One man gets through the crowd of people around Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam. His name was Al-Jarrah ibn Sinan. This man, he takes a knife. He stabs Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam in his thigh and he says, you have become a kafir just like your father before you. Just like who? Your father before you. Keep listening. Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam is taken to one of the houses in Medina, I believe it was. And Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam is taken, he gets medical attention, he's fine. Alhamdulillah, it wasn't fatal. But what does Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam choose to do now? He says, I want to make peace with Muawiyah. I'm going to write a peace treaty. Why? Because I don't have people who will stand with me. What some riwayat say, that he said, if I had just seven people that will truly stand with me in sincerity, I will stand up against Muawiyah. So listen what happened. Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam contacts Muawiyah through a letter or a messenger, tells him, I'm going to make peace, but with conditions. And these conditions are extremely important because these conditions are what ultimately lead us to Karbala. Listen to the conditions. Imam al-Hassan tells him, you want the caliphate? Take the caliphate. Take the caliphate. You want the chair? Take the chair. We are imams. Whether we stand or whether we sit. Take the chair. But we have conditions. First condition. Listen to the conditions. First condition. The Shias are not to be touched. The Shias are not to be killed. The Shias are to live in peace and tranquility under your government. Number one. Number two. When you die, O Muawiyah, if I am alive, i.e. Al-Hassan, the caliphate comes back to me. If you die and I am dead, then it goes to Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam. Keep that in mind, please. That one is extremely important. Extremely important. That's the second. Along with other conditions as well. Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam sends those conditions to Muawiyah. Muawiyah already had his signature on the paper before. Muawiyah sent him a paper with his signature. He said, write your conditions and send it back. Imam al-Hassan sends the letter back with the conditions. Muawiyah accepts the conditions. He accepts the conditions. Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam was trying to expose Muawiyah because he knew that Muawiyah was not going to fulfill the conditions. He was not going to fulfill his promises. And listen, that's exactly what happened. Listen what happened. Muawiyah takes the paper. It is said after some time, he moves towards Al-Kufa and he stops in a place called Al-Nukhayla. When he stops in Al-Nukhayla, he stands in front of the people and he says to them, listen what he says. He says, all of the conditions between me and Al-Hassan are now under my feet. I did not stand up against Imam Al-Hassan or Al-Hassan ibn Ali. I did not stand against Al-Hassan and wage a war and do what I wanted to do and do what I did for me to have you to pray. Nor did I want you to pay sadaqat. Nor did I want you to fast. All I wanted to do was to be the governor, the king, Al-Malik. I wanted to have authority over you. He exposed himself for what he truly was. It is said, after some time, Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam is eventually killed by his wife, Ja'da bint al-Ash'ath. It is said, Muawiyah stays the Khalifa for about 10 or so years. After about the 6th year of his caliphate, or the 7th year, he writes that the next Khalifa after me is Yazid, my son. Even some of his own men stood up against him and said, what are you doing? Yazid, the likes of Yazid, you're going to make him the Khalifa? He said, yes, Yazid. Yazid himself. Who hears of this? Abu Abdullah al-Hussain. And where was he? In Medina. In Medina. Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam hears of what Muawiyah is plotting. What did we say before? There was a treaty. There was a sulh. There was an agreement that al-Hussain alayhi salam is to be the next Khalifa. He goes and he puts his son as the next Khalifa. Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam, from what I've read in the very beginning, he didn't exchange letters between him and Muawiyah. This is what I have read. What it said is, about around that time or a year after that time, Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam goes to Hajj. And he tries his best to take all of his family members and as much of the Shi'as, his companions, with him to Hajj. And as much people as he can, takes them to Hajj with him. It is said he stands up in Mina or in one of the holy places in Mecca and he delivers a sermon. In that sermon, he tells the people of who he truly is and his merit, who he was to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and the fact that in the last sermon of Rasulullah's life, he told the people, I leave behind you the Quran and Ahlul Bayt. He reminded them of the two heavy things. طيب. It is said they left saying, Ya Hussain, we accept. After a year or so, the riwayat say that he begins to exchange letters with Muawiyah. During that time and before that time, Muawiyah went on a killing spree. The riwayat say. It is said he sends Ziyad ibn Abih to Kufa. Ziyad ibn Abih kills 8,000 Shi'as in Kufa. 47 of those were those who memorized the Quran itself. He kills some of the most prominent companions of Rasulullah himself. And not only that, he makes it a ritual. That the people curse Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam on the pulpits. He makes it a ritual. And Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam's name is cursed on the pulpits from then on. Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam begins to trade letters with Muawiyah. It is said after some time, finally Muawiyah dies and Yazid ibn Muawiyah becomes the Khalifa. How does Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam hear about this? He knows. But how does he hear about this? Listen to what the riwayah says, and I want you now to look at how Abu Abdullah al-Hussain responds. Listen. It is said Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam is visiting his grandfather Rasulullah in Medina. Who is with him or around him? A man by the name of Abdullah ibn Zubayr. The governor's messenger comes to Abu Abdullah al-Hussain at the grave of Rasulullah. He tells him, the governor wants to speak to you. So Abu Abdullah al-Hussain says, no issue. We will go and we'll speak to the governor. Ubaidullah or Abdullah ibn Zubayr, he looks at Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam and he says to him, what do you think he wants us to do? What do you think he wants from us? Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam says, he wants us to pledge allegiance to Yazid. And so Ubaidullah ibn Zubayr or Abdullah, he says, and what are you going to do? So the Imam alayhi salam says, never. I'm never going to pledge allegiance to this man. And now he tells you why. He says, I'm not going to pledge allegiance to this man. Why? Because when Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam spoke to Muawiyah and that peace treaty was signed by Muawiyah and Imam al-Hasan himself, I was to be the next Khalifa. I was to be the one that comes after Muawiyah himself. By him putting his son as the next Khalifa, he's taken away my right. And then he says, as for Yazid, he is a man who was a hypocrite. He is a man who outwardly sins. A man that has no values. A man that has no religion. A man who is running after the worldly desires. Has nothing to do with his religion altogether. This is who Yazid ibn Muawiyah is. He was relating to that famous line where he says, وَمِثْلِ لَا يُبَايِعْ مِثْلَهُ. And a person like me, someone like me, does not pledge allegiance to the likes of Yazid. Aba Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salam refers to what Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam did before him. He said that I have the credibility. It's for me after Muawiyah. Not because I need somebody to give me credibility. Rather, I am the Imam. But he wanted to show them that even if you don't believe that I am the Imam of Ahlul Bayt and the one that has to take the Khalifa or the Caliphate, by the standards of those who came before, I have to be the Caliph. He wants to give integrity and credibility even to the secular mind, even to the secular reader that comes later on and looks and discusses Ashura. He wants to give us, my brothers and sisters, a lesson in morals and values. That this was something that was agreed upon. And since it was agreed upon, even if the person who's standing up against me is like Muawiyah himself, I'm going to honor that agreement. I'm going to honor that agreement and I'm going to refer to it. Aba Abdullah al-Husain's revolution did not begin, my brothers and sisters, on the 1st of Muharram. It began long before that. It began when Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam was not given that position, was not given what was rightfully his. To understand the history, my brothers and sisters, of Ashura is understanding Ashura itself. Why did a man like Hussain ibn Ali, why was he trampled on the plains of Karbala? Why? What's the reason? What led us as a nation? What led them as a nation to get to that point? What led them there? What led them there? And understanding that portion, my brothers and sisters, that portion of history, makes us understand how much effect and what it really means to us. By understanding the revolution, we understand how much effect it has on us. And by understanding why Aba Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salam stood, by understanding why it connects and resonates that much more with who we are in our identity. So the question is, after this, why did Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam stand? The common answer, my brothers and sisters, that you hear is that he stood against injustice. And hala, when you go on YouTube or you go on Facebook, Instagram, Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam, the freedom fighter. Imam al-Hussain, the man who stood up against injustice. Al-Hussain ibn Ali, the man who revolted against the oppressor of his age. Is that why Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam stood though? Sometimes we try, here I'll tell you this. Sometimes we try to represent our beliefs and our ideas so that those around us, those that we live next to, our neighbors, our people can understand. And sort of we can connect with them. But sometimes the real reason, please listen, the real reason why we believe in what we believe in, the real idea, the real belief gets diluted. Aba Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salam, he did not just stand for injustice or against injustice. He did not stand up against Yazid just because Yazid was an oppressor. Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam was not just a freedom fighter. Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam's mission statement was said by none other than him. He said, I do not leave or I do not stand out of playfulness, out of recklessness. I do not stand to make evil or to bring about evil, to bring about oppression. I stand to revive the nation of my grandfather. I want to forbid evil and bring about goodness and join goodness. This is what my mission is. I'm not merely a freedom fighter. I'm not someone who's fighting for the freedom of others only. There is a religion at stake. The reason that I'm moving forward is because of this religion, to save this religion. My brothers and sisters, we need to stop representing Imam al-Hussain as merely a freedom fighter. Because when you represent Abu Abdullah al-Hussain as merely a freedom fighter, then he goes on with the list. He's put with the list of other freedom fighters that came before him, and they were many. But the problem with that is he becomes diluted and just like the rest, when he was so much different and so much more than that. He had a greater mission, my brothers and sisters. He had something more. He was fighting for what you believe in. He was fighting for your salat, for your sawm, for your hijab, in your hijab. He was fighting for your religion. He was fighting for your identity. This is where we want to get to. He was fighting for your identity, not for you to just be free. Not for you to be able to walk in the streets and feel at peace and protected. Not for you to be able to say what you want to say whenever you say it. Not for you to just not be in those chains. Rather, there's something more profound that he stood for. That is your identity. That is what shapes you, who you are, what makes you you. You tell me it's something so subtle. Something so subtle. What's the difference? I'll tell you, my brothers and sisters, these subtle differences of understanding play a huge, profound effect on who we are and what this revolution means to us. Because as you know, my brothers and sisters, your identity, the identity of any human being, has 3 factors to it, or 3 sides to it. Let's call it that. 3 levels to it. Number 1, what you identify with. Please listen. What you identify with. Number 2, how well you understand what you identify with. Please listen to these words. Number 3, how you represent your identity in the outside world. Or how does that identity affect your life in the outside world? 3, what you identify with. How much you understand what you identify with. And number 3, how that plays itself, or your identity, how much does it affect the outside world, or you in the outside world? How much of an effect it has on you, how much it shapes you. How do you represent that? An application. Those 3, my brothers and sisters. So I'll give you an example of what I'm trying to say. Let's say you have an American senator, American politician. What do they identify with? What do they identify with? The Constitution of some sort, the Constitution. Number 2, how much do they understand that Constitution? It has a profound effect on who they are. And number 3, how do they bring that about in the outside world? Who are they in the outside world, and how does that affect who they are in the outside world? 3 factors that shape your identity, my brothers and sisters. Understanding these 3, my brothers and sisters, understanding these 3 will help you understand yourself. Number 1, what do you identify with? What is it that you identify with? That we all have it down. We're all Muslimin, we're all Shias. We all identify with Abu Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salam. Number 2, how much do you understand, or do I understand what I identify with? Please listen. How much do I understand what I identify with? How much do we understand that revolution? How much do we know about Abu Abdullah al-Hussain? How much do we know about our religion? The amount of ilm, the amount of knowledge the individual has is directly relative to what their identity is and who they are. Number 2. Number 3, how much of an effect that has on you in the outside world. So those are questions to ask yourselves, my brothers and sisters, and obviously myself. We all know what we identify with. But what's the degree? And how much of that shows? Why is that important? Because it's the goal, my brothers and sisters, to perfect those 3. We all have the first one down, that we identified with this religion and with Abu Abdullah al-Hussain. We identify through him. But how much of him do we understand and know? And how much of him do we apply in the outside world, my brothers and sisters? How much of him do we apply in the outside world, my brothers and sisters? That's a question for us to ask. Now you ask me, what's the difference? As in, how do I know what's part of my identity and what's not? I'll tell you this. Look at this. The ulama, they came forward and they said, there's a difference between these two ideas. Listen to what they are. As-sifa wal-khuluq. As-sifa is a characteristic a person has. As-sifa is a characteristic you have, I have, you, anybody has. Al-khuluq is something that is embedded in someone's identity, who they are. Who they are. In other words, as-sifa is how they are. Al-khuluq is who they are. I'll give you an example. When I say generosity, somebody is generous, are the two people that I'm looking at, this person is generous and this person is generous, are they at the same level or do they vary? Obviously vary. If I came forward and I said to you, Hussain, any Hussain, for example, X is generous, and I say Imam al-Mujtaba was generous, do I mean the same thing? Think about that for a second. X, John, is generous. طيب. Al-Mujtaba alayhi salam, Imam al-Hassan, was generous. Do they actually mean the same thing? Or not? Obviously, they mean something totally different. Because X can be generous today, but tomorrow not generous. Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam is generous today, generous tomorrow, and the day after. It doesn't change. When I come and I say, John is courageous, is it the same thing as saying Malcolm X was courageous or Martin Luther King Jr. was courageous? Two very separate things. Because X, whoever it is, John, can be courageous today and cowardice tomorrow. It's a sifa. It's a characteristic. But Malcolm X, courage, and Martin Luther King Jr., courage was embedded in his very personality. If I was describing John and I called him courageous, then I'm speaking about the how he is. But if I come forward and I say Martin Luther King was courageous, I'm speaking about who he was. There's a difference here between the who and the how. The first one, or when I'm speaking about Martin Luther King, the second one, I'm speaking about his identity. And the second one, I'm speaking about merely a characteristic that he held that he cannot have tomorrow. That is the difference between the identity and the characteristic. What am I trying to say? I'm asking you a question and me. Please listen. Are you Hussaini or am I Hussaini for the next 10 days? Or is my identity Hussaini? I'm going to say that one more time. Please listen. Am I Hussaini for the next 10 days? Or am I Hussaini in my identity? Do I have the Hussaini identity? Or do I have the characteristics? Just those characteristics that can go away after 10 days. Which one do I have? Which one do I hold? That's the question, my brothers and sisters. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. That's why these subtle differences, my brothers and sisters, make a difference. That's why these little things here and there, they make a difference. They truly make a difference. Because not understanding who I am and what I represent can lead me astray. Wallah, can lead me astray, can lead me away altogether. Not understanding who I am can lead me astray. The biggest example of this was someone by the name of Iblis. We all know the story, but we didn't see it and we never looked at it in this perspective before. What happened? Allah Ta'ala tells Iblis, do sujood. Iblis says no. طيب, we understand. But what was the response of Iblis? What did he say? خَلَقْتَنِي مِن نَارٍ وَخَلَقْتَهُ مِن طِينٍ. You created me from fire and you created him from clay. I am better than him. He did not understand who he was. And so when it came down to that test, he failed. Because he merely held the characteristic of the person who obeyed Allah Ta'ala. But obedience was not embedded in who he was. He merely held that characteristic Obedience was not embedded in his personality, his character, his identity. He did not have the obeying identity. My brothers and sisters, Ashura is not about coming for the 10 days only. It's not about commemorating these things just as a ritual, because that's what it's become. My brothers and sisters, the 10 days are to have that identity within ourselves grow. To become Hussaini in our identity, not in our characteristics. That's the goal, my brothers and sisters. And that's what we're moving towards. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And that's ultimately what Abu Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salam wanted. That's ultimately what Abu Abdullah al-Hussain wanted in the very, very end. To the last breath that he had, alayhi salam. The last breath that he had. That was his goal. That was his goal. He did not move an inch. Because if he moved an inch, he would be showing them that this is merely characteristics that I hold, that I can leave and I can sort of remove from myself. Rather, no, when I speak, it's from my heart and who I am. Did not move an inch, alayhi salam. And he knew where he was going. He knew where he was going, alayhi salam. It is said that Abu Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salam, he would tell his companions that I'm going towards death. We're going to die. And we're going to taste death. That's what we're going to do. We have a mission. But ultimately, we're going to be killed. He knew where he was going, alayhi salamullah. He knew where he was going, alayhi salamullah. And in the end, my brothers and sisters, when it came down to it, when he was laying on the ground, on the sand, Shabab, please listen. When he was laying on the sand, and when Shimr was walking towards him, when he was unable to do anything, still, he was unable to do anything. What he was calling for and what he stood for did not move. Did not move. He did not speak, but his words were louder than any other person's words on that day. He did not say anything, but the words that were coming from Abu Abdullah al-Hussain were louder than all of the swords, all of the spears, all of the hooves, all of the horses, all of the winds, everything. And that voice is still echoing today. And you're hearing it. I'm hearing it. How we move forward and how that affects us is whether we are Hussaini or not. And that's why it's said that the Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, every single time this time of the year came, they would not be seen smiling. They would not be seen smiling. They would mourn for him and tell the people and teach the people to mourn Abu Abdullah al-Hussain at any point they can. Because truly through him, we find the goal that we are created for. Through him, we find that goal. We get to that goal. They were not seen smiling, alayhim salamullah. It is said, Imam al-Sajjad, alayhi salam, every time he saw food, he would mix it with his tears. Every time he saw food, he would mix it with his tears. It is said he would be sitting in the middle of the day. Pick a day, Wednesday, that you're not doing anything, nothing special is going on. Just Wednesday, middle of the week, masalan, where your mind is totally nowhere. It's nowhere in any important situation or any important event, any important ideas running through your mind. Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam, it would be any day of the week. He would be sitting in his house and he would be crying for what happened to him. It is said once his companion walked in on him and he said, "Ya Imam, you're still crying. You're still crying. Allah Ta'ala has given you martyrdom and has honored you with martyrdom. To be killed under his flag." So Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam says, "Al-qatlu lana aada." Yes, being killed to us is normal. ولكن هل السبي لنا عادة? Our women being taken as captives, being moved from place to place, city to city, is that normal? Is that something that we should accept? And so As-Sajjad alayhi salam spent the last years of his life crying for his father alayhi salam. Until it came time for Imam al-Rida alayhi salam to show his wala, to speak to us. Listen what happened. It said, a man by the name of Ibn Shabib, he comes to Imam al-Rida alayhi salam. And so Imam al-Rida alayhi salam gives him and us a piece of advice. Look what he says. He says, يا ابن شبيب إن كنت باكيا لشيء فابكي للحسين بن علي عليه السلام. يا ابن شبيب, if you cry for anything, then cry for Hussain ibn Ali. فإنه ذبح كما يذبح الكبش. For he was killed the same way the sheep is slaughtered. His family and 18 men who were none like of them under the skies and the earth were killed with him. The 7 skies and the earth all cried for his murder. As for Imam al-Sajjad, when Muharram came, he would not be seen happy for 10 days. On the 10th day, it was his most tragic day. He would gather his family and children and have them read poetry for Abu Abdullah al-Hussain. One day, Sayyid al-Himyari went to the Imam. This was Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. One day Sayyid al-Himyari went to the Imam. So the Imam said to him, let us hear some poetry for Imam al-Hussain. So Sayyid al-Himyari says, أمرر على جدث الحسين وقل لأعظم الزكية يا أعظما ما زلت من وطفاء ساكبة روية. Speaking to the bones of Abu Abdullah al-Hussain with his tears, he says, how were you able to break? How were you able to break, knowing how thirsty he lied on the plains of Karbala? If a man hears his name, he hides his eyes, for even the earth weeps for him in the 7 skies. This is how the Imams felt in Ashura. But the heart breaks for Imam al-Baqir, who had to witness everything that happened at such a young age. Yes, the Imam was very young at the time, and the hardest part for any child is to say goodbye for the last time. It's narrated when the family had to leave from Medina to Karbala, the men were taking the women out of their houses to help them get onto the camels. The narrator says, a youth came out with an honorable, respected woman beside him. He brought her to one of the camels. I asked who they were, and I was told the youth is Al-Qasim, son of Hassan, and the woman was his mother, Ramla. After a while, another young man came out with a woman walking calmly beside him. I asked him who they were, and I was told the youth is Ali, son of Hussain al-Akbar, and the woman is his mother, Layla. Each man was bringing a lady or two out of the house, until a man came out. He was tall and had a beautiful shining face. His face was like the moon. Beside him were 2 honorable, respected women. I asked who they were, and they told me the youth is the moon of the tribe, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. And as for the two women, they are the daughters of Ali, Zainab al-Aqil and her sister Kulthum. This is how the woman left Medina towards Karbala. Sayyida Zainab was magnified, she was honored and taken care of. But how did she leave Karbala towards Kufa? She was tied up with tears in her eyes and was being whipped by the likes of Shibr ibn al-Jawshan. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. والعاقبة للمتقين. يا الله، نسألك اللهم وندعوك بأحب الخلق إليك محمد وآل محمد. We ask you, Ya Allah, by Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad, accept this majlis from us, Ya Allah. Accept our deeds, Ya Allah. Make us from those who follow on the path of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad, Ya Allah. Make us from those who develop the Hussaini identity. Make us from those who follow in the footsteps of Aba Abdullah al-Hussain. Ya Allah, forgive us for our sins. Make our family proud of us and give our mothers and fathers peace. Ya Rabbal Alameen. Make Sahib al-Amri wa Zaman proud of us and happy of us, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين.